Let's talk about another radical change, and that is our nuclear policy.
And wording isn't the only change in national security. The Obama administration also unveiled this week that new policy that sets limits on when nuclear weapons could be used.
What impact will this have on our national security? Let's ask Frank Gaffney. He knows this stuff inside and out. He was responsible for U.S. nuclear weapons policy during the Reagan years. He's currently president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, outline the policy as you know it, the differences from here on in if President Obama gets his way.
Good morning. Can I just say I can't help myself, but that last story, you can't possibly defeat an enemy if you can't name it or identify it. And obviously we're up against Sharia and the adherence to it, and we got to be clear about that. The new policy is arguably the latest evidence of the radicalism of the Obama administration. And I think the fact that you've got a number of military officers and secretaries of defense and state and so on dressing this up doesn't change the fact that the President of the United States is embarked upon a truly radical and I think frankly harebrained idea that we're going to somehow persuade everybody else in the world, including all of the nuclear weapons states, to give up their nuclear weapons if we progress inexorably towards the obsolescence and ultimately the irrelevance of ours. And this is really the problem. He's talking a lot about devaluing the role of nuclear weapons. He's talking about cutting nuclear weapons. He's talking about never modernizing our nuclear weapons, never testing our nuclear weapons. All of this is ultimately going to reduce the deterrent that we have to something that we're just going to have to pray people still think might work and therefore will still be deterred by. And I'm afraid that especially when you keep telling people that the importance of this whole portfolio is diminished, who's going to want to make sure that those nuclear weapons actually are safe and reliable? Not the best and the brightest, and that's what we need.
And Frank, why hand the bad guys a tactical advantage? Yeah, hey, look, we're cutting our stockpiles. Maybe you should too. That just seems counterintuitive, doesn't it?
And let me add to Steve, we're not going to attack back with nuclear weapons if you use bio or chemical weapons against us, so that's something else they should be relieved with.
Do you think the American people think that this is a good idea, that we should be reducing in anybody's mind the disincentives to attacking this country with chemical and biological weapons? I don't. And in a way, this whole thing is kind of an IQ test for the public. I think that they're going to say, you know, when the Iranians are in the process of getting nuclear weapons, the Koreans have them, the Chinese and Russians are both building theirs up, and this president is just fixated on the idea that we're going to get rid of ours.
Right.
Is that really going to make the world a safer place, at least for us? Clearly not.
Frank, I got to get this in. Defense Secretary Bob Gates apparently behind the scenes did not want to go along with this. Now he did. He came out front and center in front of the microphones. Do you believe that, number one? And number two, how does Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State feel about this?
Well, you know, the New York Times reported the other day that Secretary Gates and his team were subjected to the bureaucratic equivalent of 150 waterboardings. That's more than Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. They ultimately broke him. He had fought manfully against a lot of this craziness, including, you know, yeah, he was policy boarded, and he was, in fact, back in October of 2008, very clear. We've got to be able either to test or to modernize our arsenal. This isn't going to allow us to do either. And Hillary Clinton, I think, is clearly irrelevant on this. She is going along with the president's program, but it's when they broke Bob Gates, when they broke the Pentagon, and I think, in fact, have broken the nuclear weapons enterprise in this country, that is giving rise to an outcome that's going to be very dangerous for all.
Secretary Gates should have left.
Bob Gates, and I was just going to say that I predict he's not going to be around as Secretary of Defense.
I don't think he's going to be that much longer either, but I wish it was a matter of principle that was causing him to leave now.
All right, Frank, it's always a pleasure. You're going to have to leave right now. Red Bear will validate your parking down there in Washington. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.